than on ABC. Now, while Trump is quaking in his boots, Kamala Harris has a lot of spring in her step. This morning, former President Barack Obama and his wife, the former First Lady of the United States, Michelle Obama, endorsed Kamala Harris. I'm hearing myself. That's kind of weird. There we go. Endorsed her and to be the Democratic presidential nominee, saying in a statement, Michelle Obama, that they would do everything they can to elect Kamala Harris to be the next president of the United States. So I'm so lucky. I'm not sure, because Jenna's a troublemaker. I have an incredible panel to break all of this down. Brad Bauman is the CEO of Firestart Campaigns and the former executive director of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. And Jenna Arnold is an entrepreneur and activist. She was a national organizer for the 2017 Women's March on Washington and served as a Biden campaign surrogate in 2020. Brad, Jenna, thank you so much for joining us this evening. How are you both doing?
I'm very well. How about you, Brad? I'm excited for the opening ceremonies tonight.
You are.
It is going to be incredible. I really am excited too. I've actually got a friend whose daughter is on the U.S. swim team, so I'll be rooting them on. It's very, very exciting.
Ah, great. So maybe we'll get a little bit of that in, some of that in. Here's what we're going to talk about. I mentioned in the beginning, Kamala Harris and the Obama, Vice President Kamala Harris and the Obama, the Vice President's path forward, and the person who wants to be Vice President, and that is J.D. Vance. Does Donald Trump have buyer's remorse? That's what we want to know. So let me give you a little context here. So as I said at the top of the show, that the former President Barack Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama threw their support behind Vice President Kamala Harris, her bid for president. They did it this morning. The Obamas were perhaps the most prominent holdouts, as the rest of the Democratic Party quickly coalesced around Harris this week. But Obama's delay was intentional, a close advisor familiar with his thinking said, noting that the former president didn't want to interject with an endorsement while the party decided its process for determining its nominee. So here is the official video put out by the Harris campaign. Take a look, and then we will discuss everything.
Kamala.
Hello. Hi.
Hey there.
Oh, hi, you're both together. Oh, it's good to hear you both.
I can't have this phone call without saying to my girl Kamala, I am proud of you. This is going to be historic.
We called to say Michelle and I couldn't be prouder to endorse you and to do everything we can to get you through this election and into the Oval Office.
Oh, my goodness. Michelle, Barack, this means so much to me. I am looking forward to doing this with the two of you, Doug and I both, and getting out there, being on the road. But most of all, I just want to tell you the words you have spoken and the friendship that you have given over all these years mean more than I can express. So thank you both. It means so much. And we're going to have some fun with this too, aren't we?
So, Jenna, what do you think of the endorsement video? Were you surprised that the Obamas waited as long as they did? I mean, Harris has been at the top of the ticket for about 5 days now.
No, I feel like that strikes me as protocol and makes sense for the organizations, the institutions, the current electeds, the voices that theoretically should matter the most to go first. Obviously, the Obamas have a lot of currency. They do for me. But I knew where they were going to land. And to be honest, I wasn't tracking whether or not they had endorsed or not. There's a lot of other folks and organizations that I'm a little more curious about than where they land, than whether or not they've said something. So this wasn't obvious. It was lovely to see. It felt like an authentic conversation to me. Some people feel like it was too staged. It didn't strike me as that. So I'm excited and great. And it's great social media content more than anything.
Did you think it was a little too, I thought it was produced, but I thought appropriately so. It was a little slick. But you thought it was, you didn't mind it, right?
I didn't mind it. I mean, like, it strikes me as a sincere chuckle. Now, I'm not like a stage actor, but I'm pretty good at calling BS. And it felt normal. I mean, Kamala's response, I hope the one thing that I am so eager for is for the Democratic camp to take a step back and let Kamala own more of her voice and do her thing and speak from her voice box, not from a scripted one. And so I feel like I'm seeing that a little bit more over the past couple of days. And I think this moment was one of them too, even if it was like, wow, the audio on the speaker is really well captured. It's fine.
Brad, what'd you think?
You know, you let off tonight with, boy, are they scared shitless. And they should be, because what you saw in that call, what you saw in that video was the fact that as a party, we're united. We are united. We are behind Harris 100%. They know that the level of excitement out in the world is just absolutely bonkers for what we're seeing with the campaign, what we're seeing with folks coming out of the woodwork, the hundreds of thousands of folks who are showing up and donating to the campaign for the very first time. A lot of first-time donors in the first 48 hours. It's been remarkable. So guess what? Yeah, was the video a little produced? Sure. But at the same time, it was a signal to everyone that we are all behind Harris now, and that this is the race that they're getting.
So let's talk about that a little bit more before we move on, because I think it's really important to point out what happened last night online, okay? Because there were hundreds of thousands of people, especially women, and they were calling themselves white women for Kamala Harris, or white women for, I think so. They raised, I think it was it $8.5 million or $8.4 million? Jenna, I mean, that is, when I saw that, I was like, if Kamala Harris, if she gets the white woman vote, right? Because white women didn't overwhelmingly vote for the Biden-Harris ticket last time, nor did they overwhelmingly vote for Barack Obama. But if she does, if that happens this time, I think it's game over.
Sadly, it's not one of my favorite subjects that I'm an expert in, but this white lady shtick is one that I'm intimately familiar with and have also raised my hand to study over the past, since November 9th, 2016, to be exact. And Don, as you said, 51% of white women voted for Trump in 2016 and 53% voted for him in 2020. The problem with any numbers or polls like that is that it's hard to tell how many new voters there were, how many swung from one side to the other. I like to think of our demographic as a little bit more canceling each other out. There are some counties where if more white women showed up to vote, it could be a hooked line and sunk. Now, I am going to, for the rest of my life, stand by that Black, Brown, and Indigenous communities elected Biden in 2020. The white female vote also put wind in their sails and were a close second to it. It is also going to be that case this year. I am hesitant to talk about this subject for a number of reasons. One, because white ladies don't need to be taking up any more space or any more airtime. I do think the day after a Zoom call that broke Zoom, it broke Zoom like 5 times. They had to call in like Mr. Zoom himself, and the thing had to be rebooted 3 or 4 times, and all 100,000 people sat there and waited.
200,000 ended up being 200,000 people. And we have to remember, look, I think you bring up something that's very important, because it was Black women, right, who initially started this with 40,000. They broke Zoom, and then Black men did it the next night, and then white women did it last night. Look, I think if you're doing something to help, then people should talk about it. I think it's also important to say this was a record-setting Zoom call. It was the largest Zoom call in the history of Zoom. 200,000 people, $8.5 million. That's a lot. I understand where you said white women, you don't think they should be taking up any more space, but I think they're doing the right thing. You have to admit that. At least they feel they're doing the right thing, and they're standing up for.
We are all marching in the same direction. Everyone's got a row. A couple of things, and this is where I was, on text until the wee hours in the morning trying to figure out some more data, and it's just never going to surface because of the data that was collected. A couple of things about the Zoom call with Black women earlier this week. That one had only 1,000 people had RSVP'd, and that ballooned up to its final number of 40,000 plus within 3 hours. The conversation the following day with Black men also only had a small percentage of the people who ended up showing up. And they also didn't have the days going into it to respond or to vamp or to market the actual event. The white woman call was announced on Tuesday, and by yesterday afternoon, there was no space left to RSVP for it. So it was just, I want to make sure that what we don't do is compare the calls, because they had different runways. For marketing, they had different tech challenges. I admittedly, at the end of the call last night, it was like announced $2 million was raised, and it feels overwhelmingly significant for all the obvious reasons. And then today, it was about noon when it was announced that $8.5 million was raised. That really put me back on my heels in surprise. Because the donation links were also not working. Everyone is getting like that death spiral constantly. But I want to know how many of these ladies are first-time donors. How many of these, this is the first time some of the folks have shown up on calls, because we knew we were going to get many thousands of people to attend because they are in the trenches already, and they would have been for Biden too. But how many of this is like fresh blood that's going to canvass and show up to make sure that she becomes president?
New voters. So Maureen Markel is in the comments, and she says, as a white woman, I am excited to lend my support to Kamala. Thank you, Don. Wow, that's a lot of fun, says Andrea. And I think everyone agrees with that. So Brad, you and I met today via email, because I noticed, I said, by the way, let me give some context to this. I was on the call for Black women, but not directly. I didn't want to take up space because it was crashing. So I had my Black women friends texting me what was happening. They're like, we just crashed Zoom, Don, whatever, you got to report on it. And I was in Europe 7 hours ahead. So I was on that call. The next night, the Black men's call, I was on that call, was 3 a.m. where I was, and that had a record number of people as well. Last night, in addition to the white women call, right? And please stop saying on social media that I'm being race baiting, because that's what they call themselves. All right. The white women for Kamala Harris.
Yeah, so we're going to just say that bluntly. It was white. It was designed for white women.
Yeah, let's be honest about what it is. And it was designed for Black women, designed for Black men. And so then last night I was on the call for white women. I was also on the call for 2 LGBTQ plus communities. One for the Black LGBTQ plus community and one for the overall community. And I spoke on both of those. So there's a lot of constituencies going on. And on both of those calls that I was on, I made a challenge to white men. I said, white men, you're next. Let's see. I don't know. A lot of people are stepping up. And that's how I met Brad Bowman, because I signed on to social media this morning. And here I see white dudes for Kamala Harris, and that you have a phone call. Brad, why are you doing it? What's going on? What are you saying to white dudes about supporting Kamala Harris?
Well, I'll tell you, white dudes just need to step up, and that's what we're doing. So first off, I don't think that we in any way, shape, or form are going to break the sort of records that we've seen where the other constituencies, other folks who've done such a tremendous job bringing people into the campaign. But, Jenna, if you do have Cornelius R. Zoom's number, I'll happily take it in case I need to back channel with them.
By the way, Brad, as I said to you, this is not a competition. This is a challenge. Everyone is working in consort with each other. Right?
That is absolutely correct, because the stakes are really that high. The fact of the matter is that it's been tough to talk with white men about democratic politics for some time. And honestly, the other side puts millions, if not billions of dollars into ensuring that white men continue to vote for folks who are not acting in their best interests, who are, contorting what it means to be a man, contorting what it means to be an American, and ultimately taking us down a very, very dark road with MAGA politics and flirtations with nationalism and Christian nationalism. And the truth is that we need to do more to talk to white dudes about what America is and what America isn't, and to take back some of these things that the other side is taking. And, you know, when Ross Raquetto decided to set this up and brought 4 friends together, I don't think that he knew, I certainly didn't realize that it would only take us about 7 hours to get to about 10,000 RSVPs. And that number is just ballooning. It's ballooning as, you know, you, as the 3 of us sit here and talk. So there's clearly an appetite to talk about this. There's clearly an appetite amongst white dudes to get involved in the campaign. And, you know, hopefully through this effort and a lot of other efforts that we're kind of undergoing, we will be able to draw people into the campaign, draw people into what Kamala's vision is for the future, and ultimately ensure that we join with the rest of the community who are going to put her back and ultimately elect our first Black woman president.
Here's what's interesting to me, and I think, you know, I've said this to my audience before. My audience knows where I stand on this particular issue, and this issue is important. It's important for me to be transparent because I do think democracy is on the line. I do think that women's reproductive rights, that's important for not only for women, it's important for the entire country. You have to be allies with each other. I'm an independent. This is the first time I've ever said who I was supporting in this particular campaign, because I think it's important for people to be on the side of democracy and to be allies. And so as our conversation today, Brad, as we talked about it, I noticed that I have people in my life from all different political stripes. And just this is unscientific, but just judging from the incoming and from the feedback that I'm getting, there's a certain way that I think I hear from Black women, cautious, but very supportive, that I've been hearing from Black men, cautious, but very supportive, that I've been hearing from white women, same thing, very supportive. And now that it seems, you know, now that the Democratic Party has coalesced around Kamala Harris, not so cautious in any of those groups. But for the most part, and for my LGBTQ friends, but for the most part, for my straight white friends, yeah, I'm getting sexual memes about Kamala Harris. I'm getting, you know, name calling things. I'm getting all kinds of, you know, I hate her. I can't stand her. And I'm like, where is this coming from? Even she looks fat, like all kinds. And I'm like, why? How has this happened to our society? You don't have to agree with someone, but you don't have to be insulting about how you feel about them. Is this is this bro culture? Like, is this kind of what it is to be a man in this society? Like, what is going on here, Brad?
It's not bro culture. You know, Don, so many folks are so scared. And the last 24 years, 25 years, society has changed a lot. It's changed quickly. I mean, if you think about the way where things were in the 90s versus where things are today, the amount of change that has occurred technologically and with the economy and jobs and everything else, people are afraid. And one of the problems is that the other side has captured a lot of white men fears and have been able to turn it towards this toxic notion of how we're supposed to talk or interact with one another. And the truth is that we, and I do mean we, the collective we, meaning white guys, haven't actually done enough to fight back against that constant din of jokes that or things that, you know, we're told are harmless when we're all talking with one another, but in fact are inflicting real harm on one another. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I think we can do with an effort like this is to really talk honestly with one another, to talk clearly with one another about what's appropriate and what's not appropriate, what makes sense and what doesn't make sense. And ultimately, what I'm hoping for is that we can kind of assuage some of the fears that are causing folks to kind of feel this inherent sense of tribalism that they're feeling and kind of open up a little bit. Because, you know, honestly, we don't have to be afraid. And despite the fact that white guys live in a media ecosphere where they're told to constantly be afraid and be tough and pretend that like masculinity requires you to be, you know, on the verge of punching somebody in the face, it's just not an accurate reflection of who we are and what we are and what masculinity is.
Yeah, but I mean, look, since I've been in this medium, particularly in the digital medium and, the podcasts and,
Yeah.
the podcast bros and the biz bros and all of that, I do find that attitude surprising, and it's prevalent as well. Jenna, you were shaking your head as Brad was saying his piece there. What were you shaking your head? Were you agreeing and disagreeing? What's up?
No, agreeing. I was also laughing internally that, Brad, if you can get 1%, I'll even give you like 0.5% of the guys that show up on your call to admit that they feel vulnerable and then scared, that is a massive accomplishment. That's aside from what has to happen between now and November 5th. We don't raise our boys to embrace any of the emotions
Yeah.
that so many of all the other demographics have had to accept, hold, move through life holding. And it's interesting, Don, to hear the kinds of memes that you're receiving. I know we were laughing before we started that, I get a lot of feedback because I spend a lot of time on Fox. And they send me the kind of content, whatever their handle is, to be like, see, it was really stolen, or see, like, this is what actually happened. And so I don't think that the folks that have registered for your call, Brad, or the folks that are going to continue to show up, and I am raising my hand to make sure all of the dudes that I know register, participate. Anyone who's in the audience right now, this is like you texting the link to the people saying sign up. But none of them have are seeing content like the ones that you were describing, Don. A lot of the white men that I spend time having conversations with in the swing counties throughout this country are hiding behind sort of gender-based, race-based confusion and just asking, but I need to understand her policies more, or what has she really done about the border? And it's almost like we've trained ourselves to believe that we can be policy focused going into this election. Because previous years, midterms and presidential, that could be considered fair. Like, I think Romney versus Obama, I'm like, yeah, let's talk about policy. But that's not now. That is not now. It is not now. And it is just, I don't know, go to project2025.org.com, whatever it is. And even though Trump is trying to distance himself from that right now, it was the Heritage Fund that is entirely responsible for the structure of SCOTUS. And it is the Heritage Fund that is entirely responsible for 2025. So even if there's an effort to be like, but that's not his game plan, really, don't believe it. Don't believe it. And you can pick just pick 1, 2, 3 of the subjects on 2025, like no more school lunches, or a librarian can be charged with sex offender related crimes for putting LGBTQ books into the library. Like, I mean, we are talking about tiny things that are not who we are. So the white men that I am really pushing to help me understand, now this was before Biden stepped down, I continue to put a slew of candidates in front of them. I'm like, just pick one. Like, who would be the alternative? And most of them preferred Gavin, and for obvious reasons. For obvious reasons, because they preferred to see somebody who looks like them in the Oval Office. And then I said, but what about Kamala? And they were sort of muted it. And then I pushed again. I said, what about Kamala? And they said, we would absolutely vote for her because it's a no Trump vote. And so my request of the white man call, the white dude call, whatever you're calling it, white men for Kamala, whatever, is that you make sure you center that this isn't just about 11.5. This isn't just about abortion rights. This is about changing our relationship to ourselves, vulnerability, understanding that you can't not talk about race and gender when it comes to this election. It's impossible to split.
And I'll go one step further, Jenna. Jenna, I agree with not just everything that you said, but I think that one of the things that I almost heard you say, I heard everything you said, and one of the things I almost heard you say is that we cannot go through this election without talking about the emotional state that folks are in, and especially, white guys talking with other white guys about their emotional state and being
it's gonna be
honest with each other, right? It is. It's an absolute reality.
But particularly for this demographic. I mean,
100%.
white men and white boys are the scariest demographic to me in this country, hands down, as they should be for everybody. They
100%.
are not doing well.
Talk to me about that, Jenna, please.
Well, Brad,
So here's because
I can speak to it, but
well, let me put this. Let me say this, and then you can speak to it, because I noticed. I mean, you'll have to talk to me about. I don't have children, right? And so you can talk to me about young men and boys, but the older people who I know, they seem to. It's part of the media ecosystem, and part of living in an echo chamber, where they get their information from either social media, right, the memes they pass around, or from other people, or on the golf course, or whatever it is.
That demo's not on social the way that other demos are.
Yeah, but they are on. They listen to talk radio.
Yeah,
They listen to podcasts. They listen to Joe Rogan.
No, but
They
real
listen
talk.
to-
When you just said the golf course, that's sincerely.
Mhm.
That is sincerely where a lot of them get their information from.
Yeah,
and it's actually not. They're not going there for data. They're going there not to make a decision. They're going there to see what their friends are thinking.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't even understand how they draft off of systems, let alone talking about race, gender, class, ability, like none of those kinds of things. And I'm speaking broadly here, but I can point that out even in my own blind spots. But they're really, they used to rely a lot more on local papers.
Mhm.
And that doesn't exist anymore. That was actually something that I found fascinating, was nobody wants to turn on the news. No one's watching any news because they feel like it's context sport.
Right.
There's definitely a level of distrust, not in that people aren't presenting the right things, but just sort of like, but how is it sort of being spun to target the audience a little bit? That I happen to believe that Rachel Maddow's producing team is very, very smart, qualified journalists, but they're still interpreting everything through their bias. Whereas compared to Fox News, Fox only has an agenda. Like, their journalists have to stay online. I've spent too many hours in the green room having conversations after we have just talked about something like gender or gender neutral bathrooms, to then get offline and be like, well, actually, like, I identify as queer, even though they just said on air that there's only two genders, right? So there's like marching orders at Fox, and then there's the biases at the other places. And like, everyone's a little bit like, yeah, we get the shtick and we're over it. But they used to rely on local papers. They used to rely on papers in general. And I think they're being swayed. And this is where like the white ladies come in. I think they're being really influenced by the people in their households, their wives and their kids. So one interesting fact that I love, and Don, Brad, please cut me off whenever, but this is like my favorite.
It's fascinating. That's why we're here. And then I'll let Brad weigh in. This is the least I've talked on any one of my shows.
Interrupt.
No, go on.
So recycling bike helmets and seatbelts. Those were introduced as suggested social behaviors at 3rd grade. Why? Because at that age, you've got like 8 or 9 year olds, and they're going home and they're gullible and they're still pestering their parents. 15 years later, everyone recycles, wear bike helmets and seatbelts. The same thing has happened with the climate movement. It has really trickled up through young people. I don't think going into 2016, white women were like, there's no way Hillary's not winning. We all fell for it, obviously. There's no way Roe won't be touched. I'm not going to have any of these hard conversations with folks. I'm certainly not going to make this another conversation in my kitchen when I'm already frustrated that he didn't fix the garage door and I'm bitter because blah, 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 blah. Like, we have other things to bicker about that impact my life a little bit more. Then 2016 to 2020, the pot was stirred and white ladies in swing counties got more agitated, but they were still only willing to talk to their other agitated friends about it. Now, I think the gloves are off. Now they're like, who at the church, who at the country club, who at the pickleball court, and I'm not stereotyping. I go play pickleball. I know who's there. They are like, whatever it takes. My fear is not the lack of bravery that is going to come from white children and white wives to their white husbands, is that there might be some sort of like, look how amazing Kamala's doing. She hasn't even gotten the nomination yet. She's raising $1 quadrillion. Like, we're kind of okay. I am so interested in making sure the momentum is there, that everyone is still has the fear of God in their eyes until polls close on the 5th. And then I want to take this momentum to the 6th, and everyone needs to behave like Donald Trump won. That transition must happen.
Wow, Jenna, that's fascinating. You addressed a lot of stuff, but I'm telling you, there is a mark or market, however you want to say the word, potato. There's a marked difference between my straight white male friends and everybody else, the way they are handling this whole election and the whole Kamala Harris thing. By the way, look in the comments. This is our show, by the way, guys, where we, lady and gentlemen, where we speak to our subscribers and the people who are watching. So we have a whole bunch of folks watching us. So make sure you hit the thumbs up and make sure you like and subscribe. I'm
actually watching over here, and I just saw all the white male celebrities. Don, I want to know who you would pick.
Okay, yes, but I just want to tell everybody that they should go and click on a link. There's a link, and it's by someone. It's not, I didn't type it, but one of the producers did, the moderator. Sign up for White Dudes for Harris. Sign up for White Dudes for Harris call, and then you can link. There's a link in there, the Google, it's a doc, and you can sign up. So make sure you go and sign up for that. Just click on that link. Do it after, or if you click on it, don't click off of the show, but make sure you go in there because we put it on. Okay, so in the comments that Jenna mentioned in our polling, the polling says, what celebrity would you be most excited to see on the White Dudes for Harris call? Tom Hanks, George Clooney, Leonardo DiCaprio, or Chris Evans? Ooh, okay. So I have some stories about all these guys. Tom Hanks, I don't know. You know, George Clooney, yes. Leonardo DiCaprio, I love his acting or whatever. Chris Evans, yes. So, yeah.
Oh God, I have
George
such
Clooney is my hall pass, by the way. George Clooney's my hall pass.
Such a strong opinion here.
Yeah.
Jenna, who you want?
I want the guy that all the other white men don't find threatening. So that rules out George, Don.
That would be Tom Hanks. That would be Tom Hanks.
Who is like the guy next door, feels kind of average, even though he swings for the fences every single time.
So we going Jason Sudeikis?
No, actually, that's a good one. Note to producer, next thing, poll, do that. No, it has to be Tom.
It's got to be Tom. Okay, Brad, what do you expect from this call? Because Jenna laid out something. I think it's a challenge for you. She said if you can get 1% of the people on your White Dudes for Kamala Harris call to admit that they feel vulnerable and that they're scared, then you've really accomplished something. Because I think it's really tough for most men in general to admit that, and because they put on this whole bravado thing. They've got to be cool. They got to be a bro. And if you do that and you admit you have feelings or you're emotional, then you're a cuck. You know, that's where we've come to in society. So talk to me about that. How are you going to get that across in this call?
You know, one of the ways that I'm hoping we get that across in the call is by being emotionally honest with ourselves. You know, I'm happy to do it. I know that the folks who I'm working with on this are happy to do it. And maybe if they see us doing it and the people and the validators that we're bringing together, maybe they'll do it as well. You know, Don, Jenna, I spent the majority of the young part of my career running around the Midwest in small towns, talking with guys who look a lot like me, who worked at steel mills, who lost their jobs, who were told, that all they were told was put your head down, work hard, everything's going to be fine. You're going to have a job for 65 years. I grew up in a generation of us that were told, put your head down, go to college, and don't worry. You're going to get a job and you'll have a job for as long as you need it, and everything's going to be okay. When you couple that generational story that we were told year over year and decade over decade, and then you're confronted with the economic realities that a lot of folks in, the Midwest and the Great Plains and everything else are confronted with every single day, they see that forces that have been outside of their control have completely changed the economy, completely changed their lives. Their children have moved to big cities. They don't know what's going on, and they're seeing their communities die. It's scary. But nobody wants to admit that they're scared. And none of the folks involved who have been sitting there want to admit that it's okay that in certain aspects of their life, they might have failed. I don't want to go too far into it, but, I'm coming off of some personal failure. I'm coming off some economic failure. I'm coming off some feelings, deep feelings, that I let a lot of people down just recently. And you know what? I'm not a failure just because a business failed. And I'm not a failure just because, folks, were down on what happened. But the truth is that years of shit that my dad told me, years of shit that society has told me about what I'm supposed to be capable of, what I'm supposed to do, it played a major head trip on me. And it plays a head trip on a lot of other people too. I hope, it's truly my hope, that folks are able to find small ways in which they can break through. And look, this call is not going to solve the emotional issues that folks are having. It's not going to solve baseline problems like that in terms of like honesty and that, relationship that we need to have with ourselves and everyone else around us. But maybe, just maybe, it can be a starting point to get folks to understand that MAGA and the toxicity and this nationalism on steroids that folks are bringing into our system, and they're just going to destroy our democracy because they don't want to share it with everyone else. Like, I know that it doesn't matter whether you're a success or failure, whether you're afraid or you're absolutely confident. The one thing that is that is antithetical to the story we tell about ourselves as Americans, and that we can't go down that road. So that's at least what I'm hoping for in this call.
Brad, I have a couple of folks that I would love to recommend who can help thread that needle for you, because I think you're dancing around it the way that you said, I feel like I failed, those kind of things. It's not that they're scared to be scared. They aren't fluent in that emotion.
Yeah.
So it's this freedom to move into an I don't know state. I call it the sacred end. I made a necklace. I touch it in the same way people would touch a cross or a Jewish star, that like, I am an amazing mom until I have to tell my kid to brush their teeth for the 4th time. I love this country. And most of the time I'm clenching my jaw at our systems and the way that it is. It is the sake. We have to move into a place that lacks certainty, shed the perfection performance.
Totally.
And like find our way back to ourselves and each other. And that is possible if you say things like, I don't know, and I'm nervous.
Yeah. Listen, I think that's fascinating. Just real quick, I'm going to do something real quick, and then I just want your response because I'm going to have to end the show a little short this time. I was speaking to a friend, and I asked him about, because you heard the statements from from JD Vance, and he's not doing so well when it comes to the polling. And you know, I texted a friend and I said, "What do you think?" He actually knows Donald Trump, and I said, "You know, do you think he's going?" I said, "Do you think that he's going to drop JD Vance?" And he said he should drop JD Vance. I doubt he will, but DJT is the most unpredictable person I know. If Kamala Harris wants to win, this is what he said. And you said we should not talk about policy in this election, Jenna. If Kamala Harris wants to win this election or wants to win, she should stop talking about Trump, saying that he's a felon and asking if he has checked with his parole officer. None of that is going to matter. All that matters is if she can convince people that they will be better off if she is the president. I won't say where he lives. He said, where I live, friends are concerned about the Democrats' denial of anti-Semitism, their lack of desire to lower interest rates, etc. What say you?
You want me to go first? I have a lot to say.
Yes, but quickly though, because I've got to run. So I'm sorry to rush you.
That guy lives in Palm Beach. 1, 2. Here's what I would say. I actually think we should absolutely continue to talk about policy, double down on policy, double down on Trump, and double down on the fact that we want our country to look nothing like the direction that he's going. I think JD Vance, like, it is really fun. Speaking of social media material, I'm really, really enjoying it. And it was an absolutely terrible selection for him. I'm grateful that Biden waited till after the RNC to decide to step down, because it obviously forced.
You think he's going to drop JD Vance?
I don't think he can. He?
Yeah, he can technically. It'll show weakness, but if he thinks in some way that it's going to cause him to lose, he will figure out a way.
So I'm going to challenge your friend in one more step, not just the what it's going to do for their life, what Kamala's going to deliver to their world. That guy doesn't want to vote for Kamala, but you hear him starting to process why he has to. The way that I would respond to him is do you know the kind of mess that you will have to clean up in your personal life if he is elected? And I'm not just talking about like your angry niece who doesn't want to talk to you anymore. I'm talking about if you are a Jewish person, what this is going to mean about you're going to need 5 metal detectors walking into your synagogue, not 1. The level of inconveniences that are going to show up in your life. It's not just about like your resources and your money. Again, that's when we had the freedom and the privilege to be single issue voters. That's not it anymore.
Yeah. Brad?
So first off, as a Jew, I can tell you that President Biden, Vice President Harris have been extraordinary in terms of not just calling out anti-Semitism, but working in order to mitigate anti-Semitism, and have done so in a way that is so incredible that it puts to shame what many presidents have done in the past. Secondarily, we can't hide behind the thought process that, or questions about anti-Semitism without looking directly at Donald Trump and saying that he is literally telling white supremacists that it is okay to be anti-Semites, that there is a place in his administration for them, in his world for them, and handing over power to them. I mean, nothing will make us more unsafe in this country than a second Donald Trump presidency, period, dot.
Yeah.
Only other thing, go ahead. Sorry, Don.
No, I've got to wrap it up because I've got to go. I have a very important interview that I have to get to. But I just want to tell you, I just want to know how can people sign up, Brad, real quickly? How can they sign up and get involved?
So bit.ly, so bit.ly / white dudes for Harris. Sign up, join us, be a part of the conversation. Let's do it together.
I want to continue this conversation. Jenna, you were fascinating. Brad, you're fascinating. I love the information, Jenna, that you provided.
Can I just give a quick shout out to all of your comments? 1, Teresa Rodriguez, I see you. 2, I love all of you. 3, I will post the link to the white dudes thing in my Insta stories. I meant at It's Jenna.
Yeah.
But I love this conversation. And
I do too.
Enjoy your meeting with your bird.
Thank you. But listen, I got to say, Jenna, you should be a co-host sometimes. I love it.
I'm
I think
game.
it's
Let's
a perfect
do it.
combination. Thank you guys. Thank you for appearing on the show. Thank you, Lemonheads.
Brad, good luck. Thank you for doing
Very
that.
much.
Thank
Be in
you.
touch. I have ideas.
Love it.
Absolutely, everyone. So get involved. Make sure you join the call, and I will see you tomorrow, if not Sunday, on the Don Lemon Show. Bye, Lemonheads. Have a good weekend, Lemon Nation. Thank you for supporting independent media. Good night and good luck.